Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Leading in a Crisis podcast. On this podcast, we share stories from the front lines of crisis management through interviews, storytelling, and lessons learned as shared from experienced crisis leaders. I'm Tom Mueller. If you'd like to email the show, drop me a line at tom@leadinginacrisis.com, and we would love to hear from you. And I want to give a special shout out to our international listeners outside of America here. We've got a lot of listeners out there and want you to know we appreciate you and thank you for being here with us. Hey, my guest today is Lee Caraher. And Lee is president of Double Forte PR, which is a national PR firm here in the United States with principal offices in San Francisco, New York, and Wisconsin. So, really covering the gamut of locations here across these United States. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Hey, Lee is also a published author. She has two management books to her credit. One is called Millennials and Management. The other is the Boomerang Principle.
hmm
And we'll talk about those here in a little bit, Lee. But how do you find time to write books while you're running a national PR firm?
Um, well, the first book is actually came out of my experience of almost killing my company because I didn't understand millennials. And in the process of trying to figure it out so my company would survive, wrote a lot of stuff, not thinking about it was going to be a book at all. At the same time, my clients were having the same issues. If you, this is back in 2015, 16, when it was all millennials are terrible. Now here we are, like 10, 15 years later, and now it's all Gen Z are terrible. It's the same story, just different generation.
Mhm.
Anyway, we started writing things to help me understand. And then when this book, my first book, just sort of like fell in my publisher just said, "Will you just publish that book?" And I said, "What book are you talking about?" "This one you have about millennials." I'm like, "I don't have a book about millennials." He goes, "Yeah, but you just talked about these four things. I'm sure you have it in you." Oh, okay. That's literally how it happened.
Let's do
So
that.
let's do that. So in the end, it's more of it's a book of how to reorient your team around intergenerational team members, because now we have four and five, generations in the workplace. And what do you have to do to that to make that happen in a collaborative way? So I actually don't have time to write a book, but I do have time to figure out how to lead my company through different eras and different models for the company. I started this company in 2002 before Twitter. Now, easily half of our business is social media execution in some way, shape, or form. We've changed how we do things. It seems like every single day. Our function hasn't changed, but how we do things changes. And as the leader of that company, I have to be ahead of what all these communication changes mean. And that's really how I got the book stuff, because I was uh, running it, changing things while the bus was running, kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and as I'm just thinking about the last, 10 years, 15 years of
hmm
my working career, being semi-retired today, but just thinking about all the changes that
Uh,
social media brought to us
hmm
and the responsibility that we're putting on younger and younger people in the
mm,
organization who have their, fingers on the controls of these
hmm
global communication channels. And that is, it takes a little bit of a management
Yeah,
adjustment to think about that and to do that. But then, of course, managing the expectations of this generation who have very different, work
very
ethic
different.
than probably. Well, listen,
Well, I
from the
think work ethic is different. I think, in general, I think people work hard if they know what is expected out of them. I
Mhm.
think working hard looks different for the different generations. And that's really where the breakdown comes in the expectations around what it looks like is really the biggest issue we see in corporate America is is around expectations and what that sounds like and what it looks like between the groups.
And do you tackle that head on in the books?
Well, I mean, that is the target, and I try to hit the bullseye in 8 chapters. So
Well, I talk to a lot of crisis professionals, and I think
Hmm.
about sort of younger people coming up and
Hmm.
uh, you know wanting to be impactful and knowledgeable and effective in the crisis management sphere or lane. What any advice from your experience for those younger staff
Hmm.
coming up? And I'm sure this translates beyond the crisis lane.
Hmm.
But what do you tell them? Hey, you want to build this expertise, you want to be good at this. Here's some things you need to think about.
Yeah. Well, if you want to be in crisis, man, you're probably adrenaline junkie. You got to be really curious if you're in this business. You have to, in that business specifically, because you want to, and you got to be a fast mover and a fast thinker. At the same time, you have to have like a level of calm because the organization that you're in is going to look to you like, what do we do now, Lee? Is really when you're in that role, you people are going to ask you what to do to communicate. It's not like, hey Tom, what do you think we should do? No, no, no. Here's the situation. Here's what we have to weigh left and right. Tom, I need you to do this. I'm going to do that. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Because the comms leader is if you think about the job, right? You're speaking for the company or whatever it is, the organization, and you are the mouthpiece of the company, and you are putting words into other people's mouths, and so you have to be really good when the shit, excuse me, is hitting the fan. Sorry. Oops, bleep, beep, beep. And it's not you cannot be a yeller. You can't be, there's a time to yell. It
Mhm.
is not during this situation, right? Um,
Yeah, there's a certain temperament that
you have
goes
to
along
really
with that.
be and keeping things in perspective, right? And I've done a lot of crises in my career, and if now when people have died in crises that I've been in, not in it, but have managed, and now it's the first. We had a crisis. My first question always: did somebody die? Yes or no? No. Could somebody die? Yes or no? No. It is. We can do this on Monday, kind of thing. Because just because you didn't plan is not a crisis. But you also have to be able to discern what is a crisis and what could become a crisis. And that really means you need to know your audience. You need to know what the situation is. So, because a crisis could look very different in different things, right? Like something takes off on social media because you weren't sensitive to it or you didn't understand who the fan base was. You got to know. So if I'm talking to somebody who's like, I really would like to do crisis management, although I can't think about someone who's ever said that to me, Tom. I think about it. What I want to do is I want to work overnight. That sounds good. But
Yeah.
you got to be willing to, this is, if you're in crisis comes, uh, one, you never go alone. You always have a partner because someone's got to go to the bathroom.
Hmm.
And you got to be willing to do that, give it up halfway through and pick it up halfway through kind of stuff. So, but if you're not curious, if you don't have a level head, if you're not willing to take a breath and do an assessment of like what are the potentials here, um, and then what really is and what really isn't. And part of that, Tom, is just you just have to live next to people who are doing it to get that experience. You got to be a sponge. You have to be a sponge for the first 6, 7 years of your career because you don't get that judgment coming out of the gate. It does not happen. And you don't get the gravitas where a CEO of a company who is going through the crap will believe you because you need to be in that situation. So yes, it's true that young people are, got their hands on the keyboard, but um that doesn't, and sometimes it's just because, oh, let the young kid do it because they speak that language.
Right.
That is a throwaway, not a strategy.
Hmm.
So I
And
got, I have a lot of opinions on
and there are,
that.
numerous stories out there where a brand did just that, handed the keys
Oh,
over to youngsters who thought
mhm,
it'd be really funny to be funny on social media at some celebrity or somebody who was having
mhm.
an issue or a problem, and it just explodes, right?
Just
So
explodes. Nuance is, I mean, here's the thing, nuance is a skill. And nuance is really where that funny part of social media, I think about the fast food chains who go after each other on social media. I think that's hysterical.
it is
And that is
hysterical.
nuanced. That is not a 19-year-old who doesn't know about improv. That is somebody who has done a lot of improv work, who is nuanced, you know, they're experienced in that.
So Lee, from your perspective running the agency,
Hmm.
how do you prepare your staff, to deal with crisis? And again, most of us, depending on the industry you're in, you may not get that much exposure to dealing
Right.
with real life crisis situations. But when you do, you got to show up,
Hmm.
right? And I can cite numerous examples of people we deployed out to pretty intense crisis scenes somewhere who just didn't have the temperament, to work in a chaotic environment, to be
Hmm.
self-motivating and drive yourself to get things done.
Hmm.
And they just sort of fizzled out after a couple of days, which is
Yeah.
fine. We send them on back home, keep doing your day job, and we'll get somebody else in who can do this.
Hmm.
But as you sort of think about your teams and how you're, building capabilities,
Hmm.
how do you, sort of build that skill
Yeah.
set?
Well, for us, we have a whole career building blocks way of thinking about things because it's true. You have a crisis you can't plan. I mean, well, you shouldn't plan your own crises. So you have to be, it's opportunistic. It sounds so terrible, but it's opportunistic if it's a crisis to be on. So we have a whole, because we're a pretty top heavy agency. Half of us are at least 10 years of experience or more, and half of us are less. That is a business choice. It's unusual. Um, so, one, we always are pairing up and down so that if something happens, come along. You may just look at me. You may just watch me do this whole thing, or I may give you a clipboard and say, go over there. But just you're coming. So we never go alone. That's number one. Never go alone. Two, we have these building blocks and we train on them. And sometimes if it might be, we haven't had, it's sort of like you think about doing an offsite and you throw something at people and they have to workshop it right there in front of you. And then you D&C it, right? You're looking at it and go, detect and correct, detect and correct, detect and correct. So that you actually do that work. The third, and then when something does happen or when something is critical. So there's a difference between critical and crisis, but there's a critical moments every day. Well, I wish, well, that's not true. There's critical moments every month, right, for a client or a situation. And if the more you can bring your junior staff so that they have eyes on it, so they have exposure to it, and so they see the people who are senior who've done this go through it and how they react and how they really take presence so that what I want people to think is, what would Lee do? Or what would Matt do? Or what would Liz do? Or what would Maggie do? Because we've been through so many, the ones of us who are at the head of the agency. I mean, that's probably 160 years right there of work.
Yeah.
And we've all handled multiple serious crises. So I want them to be thinking, what would one of us do if they're by themselves? Um, and that sounds like pretty egotistical, but it's not meant to be sound that way. It's meant to say, just here, take my learning. Just take
Right.
it. Please take it.
Yeah, not
you know,
unlike what we're doing on this podcast, right?
right.
Is mining that experience, that
Yeah.
knowledge that you've developed over a career and sharing that with
Hmm.
younger staff coming up through the lines and that. So great. I appreciate that. I love that you're pairing kind of
Hmm.
more experience with younger and giving them that one-on-one. One of the things that a lot of companies find sort of vexing when dealing with crisis is just the whole social media
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it's it's an ever
Oh
evolving
gosh,
platform. It's not even a platform, a series of
ecosystem.
channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, an ecosystem. And it can be pretty daunting, I think, for companies,
Hmm.
especially smaller companies that don't have, the big resources of a Fortune 500 firm,
Hmm.
to have a five-person social media team that's
Hmm.
looking out and monitoring. So if you're counseling a company that might get hit with a crisis situation
Hmm.
and, social media has to be a part of this. How do you
Hmm.
get them ready and then execute when a crisis
Hmm.
hits?
Well, I think well, any company could have a social media crisis, right? Depending on, you think a restaurant. I mean, when you get a bad review, that could become a crisis if it takes on, and then all of a sudden no one's going, right? Because that is a business crisis. That happens all the time. So any company can have a crisis that erupts on social media. So the first thing is we need to identify those kinds of issues that might come up, right? So there's a full gamut of them, and it's not hard to figure them out, right? There's a crisis, there's a natural disaster, there's a man-made disaster, so fire, um, uh, guns, there's a death, there's something that's on your premises, off your premises, it's your people are involved, your people got arrested. I mean, someone got sick, someone didn't, all those things.
A kiss
So you may,
cam at a conference somewhere or at a
yeah.
concert.
Oh my God. Note to self, don't go to Coldplay. Okay.
Oh,
So,
what are the odds
what are
of
the odds?
that
Oh my God.
happening?
Jeez
And I
Louise.
just, I think about that one. It's like, what, if they would have just sort of held still and
Well, she
froze?
just went on a media tour. Do you know this?
No.
She did. Yeah. And she's like, well, it was our first time out, and I knew it wasn't appropriate. And I knew it. I'm like, really? You just brought it all back up. Talk about the Streisand effect. Oh my gosh.
Mm.
Anyway, yes. So what are the things? What are the things? And are you a food company? I mean, all there's lots of different. You have to figure out where's your zone, right? Number one. Number two, just know that, right? So you're figuring out what are the things. Number two, the crisis is going to arise before you can handle it, because by definition, social media is something happen. A crisis happens when you're not expecting it. It is a surprise. So, um, it's a surprise. It could be knowable that it will happen eventually, but the timing is a surprise. So then you need to have, okay, so this is going to happen. Someone's going to have a terrible video at my gas station or whatever. I'm going to have a new employee who doesn't know what to do, or, whatever the things are. Because in the end, it's all people, right? It's
Hmm.
all people. So, and then what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then protocols that are respond with, um, let me reach out, DM me with your phone, depending on what it is. What are the protocols? Like, DM me, please, with your phone number. I'm going to call you right away, or
Hmm.
not. Or it's someone who's trolling. And how are you going to handle that? And then, some clients, we have a couple clients in general who in general are just so well loved, but they're not universally loved because there are trolls in the world who are they're just
Sure.
live. I don't know why they do this. I can't even imagine living this way. It's so, like, where does the energy come from? But they just live to bring some people down. So, but if you're, there's one company I have in my mind, it's a food brand, and they universally loved, and they brought a new product, a new food to market. It was sort of a funky flavor. It was funky because it was from a specific cultural group, right? So it was funky to other people, but not to that group. And the first five or six comments were, "Ew, that's so gross." I thought the company was going to melt down. They're like, "Oh my God, Lee, everybody hates it," and I'm like, "How can that be? They haven't. It's not even available yet. They don't. They just hate the
Hmm.
idea of it." And then when I looked at the numbers, I'm like, "Okay, so the first five people who saw this on your page said it was gross. You have 500,000 people who follow you. That's not even 0.100. What is that? 0.00000%. You have to keep this in perspective. Um, so don't react. Don't do anything.
Yeah.
Don't do anything.
But that comes to,
Versus when it we're going to track it, we're going to see how it moves, and then what let's decide right now what is the tip over point where we're going to get involved. What's the tip over point? And we put the tip for that situation, we put the tip over point at 50 people and 5 days. And so by the time, the first five people, and then, it moved along. And because the algorithms enjoy you getting crap done, it gets seen by more people. And then, but then people who were also the brand lovers, but from this specific demographic were like, oh my God, thank God they brought it. So literally within a day, it had turned around. Now, if we had gone right in and said, red alarm, red alarm, red alarm, it would have gotten bigger because when you bring attention to something, again, the algorithms like that, it would have brought attention to it. And then the trolls tell the trolls, yeah, you can get them. Literally, that's how it happens.
right.
So you have to have judgment around what are these things, and help people understand it. Now, how do you train a junior staff on that? You have to, what are the protocols? What makes sense? And then how we like to do that, Tom, is to say, go, we're going to do research here. Go, I want you each to take a company who's had a bad reaction on social media, and we're going to track it. I want you each to be able to talk about what went well and what didn't, and what should we do instead. So we go out when we don't have crisis dealing on and out. We do this training, and it
Mm-hmm.
probably happens once a quarter where you say, okay, everyone's going to take a company. You choose a company that's had a problem. You go out, come back, and we'll talk about it. And that way, at least people are doing their own case studies on other things and taking a look at everything, um, to people to think about.
Yeah,
Social listening,
nice. So
though,
they're building
they're building
their own.
their own. Well, they have to build their own critical research, you know. So you really see it on the generation. So the older people like, go to Facebook and they figure it out. Da, 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 da. Younger people right over to Reddit to see what Redditors are saying, right? Because that's where
Mhm.
the genesis is, over in Reddit. And when you say that to somebody who's 50, like, what?
Yeah.
Or Snapchat this. I'm like, I wouldn't worry about Snapchat.
So
Snapchat's
Lee,
great
that's an interesting point though, because I'm one of those over 50 people who are like, Reddit, seriously?
Reddit, seriously.
But my 30 something kids, our
Mm-hmm.
30-year-old kids are all over Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And it is fascinating. But has that become part of a normal monitoring
Yes,
structure then? Is Reddit
absolutely.
is there? And do the
Mm-hmm.
tools get in and can they comb through Reddit?
Yeah. Well, what's great about Reddit is how they set up their search. So, you can't. I mean, you'll see things pop out of Reddit onto Twitter, onto TikTok. Usually, those are the first two that it pops out on. Um, you'll see things, or onto podcasts like that. Really, the deep, very narrow podcasts in culture. Things will pop out of there that are Reddit related. So you'll see them pop out into other places. But the Reddit tools on search are phenomenal. So you can, if you don't have to have a social listening, it'd be great if you did, but they're expensive. But you can go into Reddit pretty quickly, and you're going to find it doesn't look like anything else. Reddit's its own ecosystem, but the search tools are fantastic. So you can find sentiment, and you can find the situation, and you can track it back pretty quickly on what's happening, and put an assessment around it, right? Because feeding the trolls is never a good idea,
Yeah.
ever.
Okay. And all it takes is one errant tweet to sort of
Mm-hmm.
start a cascade of things happening. So
Yeah.
I love your advice there. Chill on it. Let's watch it for a little bit and see, how does it grow if it grows.
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah, that takes some discipline.
It takes a lot of discipline,
Dude.
particularly when it's you. It's like, brand managers who, like, for this is a good example. There's one company, the brand manager on the specific product was just in agony for 24 hours, in agony. And I was just trying to I was just talking him off the ledge, like, periodically throughout those 24 or 36 hours. It's like, it's okay. This happens. This is how you know you made it. Right. Just talking him off the ledge because you've put all your effort into it. It's going to do well. This product killed, by the way. They actually were only going to have it for 6 or 7 months. It was going to be seasonal, and now it's in their their evergreen SKUs. So it's going to pay off. It's okay. These aren't your people. There's however 300 million people in the United States. You're not going to sell this to everybody. You just need to sell it to 20,000 people. We're just going to go find them. It's going to work. But
All right.
that comes from years and years and years of panicking.
Right. Well, and now we have AI coming into play here, right?
Oh
Which is an
God.
overlay on everything. That'll be
Mm-hmm.
another podcast
Yeah.
episode, maybe to talk about that, because
Super important.
we're following
Super
that pretty
important.
closely over here
Yeah.
just to see. But Lee, in the couple minutes we have left, I wanted to just circle back to the
Mm-hmm.
books
Yeah.
and the what's sort of your key takeaways now for folks who might be interested in in figuring out how to better manage
Mm-hmm.
and make teams be more
Mm-hmm.
cohesive in that. What's your sort of key advice and takeaways from the
There are a
book?
few things. One is good teams talk. Good teams talk all the time. And you can tell a good team by how well they finish each other's sentences. And when they can't, I can predict to you that the performance will be low. So one is good team talks. Two is high expectations, high caring, and the way you marry those two things. So you have high expectations for people and you care about them a lot. And the way you demonstrate that caring is by, you'll be shocked to hear this, talking with them and then listening to what matters to them. So understanding who you have on your team. At my company, we do this appreciation level. The love language is appreciation in the workplace. So we understand like some people want to have a attaboy. Other people don't ever do that to be in public. So those two things, good teams talk. So, we don't let things fester, which is a challenge. You have to get people ready to not let things fester. And two,
Hmm.
high expectations, high caring. And you can only have high expectations at work if you're communicating them all the time. And the fourth thing is you're never done. One and done does not work in communication. You are never finished communicating, which is, it sounds exhausting because mostly for leaders, right? By the time we say something, we've already thought about it in our heads, right? We've thought about it for a while. We've done some reading. We've talked to some people. Here's the thought, and we want our words to come out of our mouth and people to go voila, aha. No, but they have to catch up to you. So a lot of leaders will say something and they're on to the next thing. No, 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 no. Again and again and
Hmm.
again, and then you add a team person and start again and again. And so it can be relentless that way, but the more you can repeat yourself, the better it is. The more you can be in conversation, which means shutting your mouth and listening, the better it is. And the more you can demonstrate high expectations, high caring, the better performance you're going to have over the long haul, and um, you're going to have less retention problems, which is my second book on Boomerang. And then you're going to be able to bring them back.
All
That's what
right,
I know.
Lee Caraher, thanks for that advice and thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience here on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tom. I really appreciate it.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for joining us here. Again, if you'd like to email the show, drop me a line at tom@leadinginacrisis.com. And we'll catch you soon for another episode. Take care.